If you forget projections, numbers, what's your hunch? Is the U.S. going to go into recession or not?
Look, I'm going to defer to economists who give it about a 50% chance. I think all these things are probably inflationary a little bit more and slowing down the economy. If there's a recession, I don't know how big it'll be or how long it'll last. Hopefully we'll avoid it, but I wouldn't take it off the table at this point.
Not taking it off the table. Hi again, everybody. It's now 5 o'clock in New York. No need to get your ears checked. You heard that right. A recession is very much on the table, according to J.P. Morgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon. Of course, it's one thing to predict economic pain, but to see it start to happen to real people, that's another thing entirely, and the part of the story we've been watching for closely. Today, a toxic tangle of tariffs, volatility, and supply chain issues, among other things, is making this self-inflicted economic crisis exponentially more real and tangible for Americans from coast to coast, up and down the economic spectrum. We've spoken at length about what will happen to small business owners and smaller retailers in the days and weeks to come. But what about the big ones, like the biggest? Walmart is as big as they come, as in our nation's largest private sector employer and the world's largest retailer. Put 10 Americans in a room and 9 of them would live within 10 miles of a Walmart. Well, this afternoon, it appears that Goliath, Walmart, will begin the process of raising costs of goods on consumers, even after this week's new China trade deal. During the company's quarterly earnings call, CEO Doug McMillon suggested this, quote, given the magnitude of the tariffs, even at the reduced levels announced this week, we are not able to absorb all the pressure, given the reality of narrow retail margins. Shortly after that, Walmart's CFO, John David Rainey, emphasized that earnings are still strong, but then he added this.
Our goal, though, we're wired to keep prices low for customers. But the level of tariffs that have been proposed is pretty challenging for all retailers, for suppliers, and certainly our concern is that consumers are going to feel some of that. So we're going to keep prices as low as we can for as long as we can for our customers and members.
Those tariff-related price hikes, according to him, to Rainey, could start toward the end of this month. It is a game-changing economic and political development, according to Neil Saunders, managing director at retail consultancy Global Data. Quote, if Walmart's coming out with its scale and its buying power and its focus and saying that prices are going to rise, everyone else is going to have to follow suit. Walmart is firing the starting gun on a period of price increases. And so we'll return to where we began, that a recession in this country is, quote, not off the table, end quote. It's where we start the hour with some of our favorite reporters and friends. CNBC senior economics reporter Steve Liesman is back. Also joining our conversation, David Frum, staff writer for The Atlantic, host of the new video podcast, The David Frum Show. And with me at the table for the hour, former Democratic Senator, MSNBC political analyst, our friend Claire McCaskill. Steve, I start with you.
Well, I think the way to think about it, Nicole, is that if you think about a hurricane approaching, all right, well, the hurricane's a bit smaller than it was before, and that metaphor kind of gets to the idea that the tariffs on China are lower, but it's still a hurricane. And so what we're seeing right now are kind of those first clouds that come across. And we saw those clouds in a bunch of places. The Walmart thing you mentioned is out there. Recession chances and probabilities for many of the economists I'm talking to are lower, but still considerably elevated. Think about 15% probability being about a normal distribution for the chance of a recession in any given year. Well, now they're still in the 40 to 50% range. They're not in 60%, but they're still relatively elevated. We saw a very interesting development in the wholesale price report. Not to get too in the weeds, but it looks like the first inclination of the people importing products into the United States was to take it on the chin in profits. And then if you read between the lines of what the gentleman from Walmart was saying, he's saying, okay, we absorbed some of the prices, but we can't do all of it, and we won't do all of it. So these price hikes are coming, as in the rest of the hurricane is going to come this way, at least to some extent. Does it mean empty shells? Maybe not right away, but over time, we are certainly going to see the effects of these tariffs. You cannot increase tariffs this much. That is, still at these lower levels. They're 5 times what they were before. You cannot do something like that and it have no effect on the consumer and on the retailers who are selling the stuff.
Steve, I like the hurricanes. I feel like we are in the eye right now where the live shots are always eerily quiet, but there are things swirling all around. I want to ask you, though, about a 30% tariff, because I know in our politics and when you cover the rule of law, when it's Trump, because he's such a Tyrannosaurus Rex in a China shop, there's a law of relativity through which he gets evaluated and examined. And I feel like this is happening in your area of expertise, that because the tariff started with China at 145%, everyone's like, well, 30 is a lot better than it used to be. But 30 is devastating for consumers. It's, as you've explained, it's a regressive tax on all consumer goods that come from China. 30% is also devastating on a small and medium-sized business owner, and the trade implications in terms of supply chain equally devastating. So take out where we started at 145 and just give me your analysis of what 30% tariffs on China means.
Well, you said it very well, because there's this bit of a dichotomy going on in the stock market right now, which has come back on this relief that you're talking about. Hey, it's not 145%. We are not inevitably careening towards that recession. There's still perhaps some chance, again, that the storm perhaps passes us by, or only we get a glancing blow. But when economists and people at the Federal Reserve look at it, they're like, hey, this is still a 5-time increase in the tariff rate. So what does it mean? You think about somebody like Walmart. They have thousands of products to which to spread out the cost. And you may not see it all in one particular product. They may take a little bit of less profit in this product, or a little bit more in that product. A smaller retailer, they can't do it. They don't pick up the phone and they don't call the White House and say, Mr. President, we have a problem here. No, they take it on the chin. We're already hearing stories of layoffs. The economy underlying it looks pretty good. The jobless claims numbers are in pretty good shape right now. That's why I say it's still coming our way. Is there still a chance to avoid it? It's an interesting question, because on the one hand, the president provided some relief over the 90-day period. At the same time, he did to some businesses, more deadly thing of extending the period of uncertainty for 90 days. So this creates this problem where people are still standing still. We still hear CEOs saying, look, if you think about it, what is a retailer doing right now? A good retailer is desperately seeking for those perfect and beautiful and fabulous gifts that you're going to buy at Christmas. What are they instead doing right now? They're trying desperately to secure their existing supply chains for stuff they already have. So it's an incredible distraction for the individual retailer, and it's going to mean probably something that people will see come holiday season.
David Frum, you write about the 4 scams. Explain.
Well, the scams are the fake deal with China, which is no deal, the fake deal with Britain, which is no deal. But I want to pound home a point here as people watch this, because why is the stock market up? The stock market is up because Wall Street has figured out Trump's tariffs, although bad for many people, are not going to be bad for them. Who are they bad for? I mean, this is where we have to understand what a tariff is. A tariff is a tax, but it's a special kind of tax, and it's special in 3 ways. First, it's a tax that can be imposed by the president at his whim. All other taxes imposed by Congress to represent the people. Tariffs can be imposed by the president at his whim. It's a tax that can be exempted by the president at his whim. He can sell special favors. If you want to break in the corporate income tax, you have to get Congress to pass it. But if you want to break in the tariff, just ask the president, buy his meme coin, give him a jet. He'll make a special favor for you. And last, it's a tariff that falls uniquely hardest on the poorest section of society. A tariff is a sales tax. A sales tax that only falls on goods, not on services. It falls on the doll, not on the nanny that is hired to play with the doll. It falls on the towel, not on the swimming club. It falls on the doorknob, not on the doorman who operates the door. It falls on the poorest people in society. A 10 to 30% tariff isn't going to cause shortages, and it may not push the whole economy into recession. What it does do is take it raises prices for working people, and it takes the burden of government and it moves it from people who are better positioned to pay onto the people least in position to pay. So you have to combine this tariff story with what the Republicans are doing in the House, where there's going to be giant tax cuts for everybody, financed in great part by these tariffs on low-income people. Last image. Think of a rich family and a poor family at dinner. The poor family, the table is tariffed. The chair is tariffed. The plate is tariffed. The knives and forks are tariffed. If they're eating pasta, The pasta comes from Canada. It's tariffed. Now the rich family, they go out to dinner. The most important to celebrate their new tax cut from Donald Trump. The most important cost at a restaurant is the rent, not tariffed. The second most important cost, the wage of the chef, the wage of the server, not tariffed. And the plates, they're tariffed, but they come from Italy, so they have a lower tariff than the plates that come from China. This is the most aggressive attempt to shift the cost of government from the rich to the poor that America has seen in the past century, maybe longer.
David Frum, what is the appropriate political response?
The appropriate political response is to discover the cause of free trade. There's been a lot of mealy-mouthedness from Democrats on this. Democrats have liked tariffs. Donald Trump, the most protectionist president since World War II. Joe Biden, second most protectionist president. A lot of Democrats say, I'm against these tariffs because they're dumb, but I'm for smart tariffs. The answer is to rediscover tariffs are a tax that falls heaviest on the poorest people. They're a tax that is the most dangerous tax because it's the most arbitrary tax. Tariffs are wrong. Free trade is right. And raise money, if you're going to raise money with a consumption tax, raise it on one that middle-class people pay by taxing services as well as goods, a VAT or a carbon tax. But don't make the people who are eating spaghetti on cheap chairs, on cheap tables, with cheap plates, with cheap knives, don't make them pay the cost of government all by themselves.